you can see me. Yeah, so I'm gonna go through the ingredients in a minute. So on the table, we've got quite a few ingredients. I probably have to take a few more out, but we're not that far off because that's pretty much what we need. And I also have I do have some veg stock there, which I prepare in advance because that's taking probably like half an hour, 45 minutes or so. So I don't want to keep you whilst I'm making the veg stock. But if you really want to cheat the whole situation, you can probably use a stock cube. It's not going to get exactly the same results, but yeah, you do what you can do just to get to the destination. So let me show you now what we've got for this recipe. So I'm going to go through the ingredients in a minute just to show you what we've got. If you are in the chat, maybe let me know whether the sound is okay, whether the image is okay, because I had a few issues just before getting into the stream. So I wasn't entirely sure whether it's working fine or not. With this out of the way, and with the hope that you guys can see whatever is going on here. Okay, perfect. Hello, hello. Got my friend here from the UK. How are you doing, Arthur? Sounds perfect. Okay, that's good, because that's what we want. I wasn't entirely sure whether it's working fine or not, because as I said, we had a few issues just before getting into the stream, but now we are ready. Now that you can hear me properly, let's go through the ingredients for this recipe. All good, all good. That's perfect, mate. That's nice to hear that. So, ingredients for today's recipe. I'm going to be making about 2 portions, but you know me, I don't really measure stuff. So, because of that, probably we might end up with a bit more, but that's absolutely fine. If you are to make this home, a portion of risotto is probably around 75 grams. So, I've got here about 2 portions. I don't know if it's exactly 150 grams. Probably it's a bit more than that, but that's fine. Don't worry about that. I've got mushrooms. I've got 2 types of mushrooms. As you can see here, let me actually show you exactly what's going on here, sorry. So I've got the chestnut mushrooms, which are some of my favorites because are good value for money, plus are a lot better than the normal button mushrooms, especially because of that stronger flavor, because that's what you want that mushroomy flavor. And although they are fun, obviously most of them are fun, they get better value for money in my opinion. So if you have the option, I would go for this. Not that the button don't have their own their own position and their own way of using them, but then I think for what we need today is going to get better results. Now, what else? So we've got another set of mushrooms. So it's going to be a bit weird because in today's recipe, I'm going to be using, well, not weird, but different probably than the risotto you normally make, because I want to make a puree with the chestnut mushrooms, and to finish the dish, I'm going to fry some of these shiitake mushrooms on top. So a combination of these, I think they're going to get us perfect results. I use these very often, combining the puree with the normal product, and I think it does a really good job. And I'm really encouraging you using it the same. Okay, now that we got the mushrooms out of the way, I've got here some onion, which I was going to use for something, and then I ended up not using it, so I'm going to use it today. I've got a small white onion. It's tiny, so let's say a half onion, that's what you need. Ideally, you probably want shallot, and yeah, shallots probably is like finer flavor especially for risotto, but you can get away with onion. It's absolutely fine. I'm going to be using 1 clove of garlic, but one clove of garlic is going to be for the risotto itself. And then when I'm making the puree for the mushrooms, I'm going to probably put 2 in the puree, so we get better probably results. We'll find out. I also have Parmesan, so Parmesan cheese right here. You don't need a lot, because you don't want to obviously you can add more, you can add less, it all depends how much you like it, but probably like 20 grams should do the job. I also have some thyme, a few sprigs of thyme that work really well with the mushrooms and risotto in general. I like thyme in these kinds of situations, and I think it works well. Now, also, we've got some chives. Chives, they give that nice light onion flavor, and on top of that, they look nice. You got something green with white. The combination, you got to think about the presentation as well. It's going to look nice in the final dish. With that, we've got some white wine. For risottos, in most situations, you're going to add wine, obviously depending on what dish you're making, but white wine and risotto, good friends. And something, you're probably going to say that I'm going a bit fancy, but it's not that. It doesn't cost a whole lot. I've got some truffle oil. Now, with the truffle oil, it's totally up to you. Obviously, probably you don't have any available, but that's fine. We're going to get enough flavor here to get some really nice risotto. So if you don't have it, just skip it. It just happened that I had some truffle oil, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna use it and make it a bit more fancy, but don't think that's gonna change the whole thing a whole lot. So yeah, and I forgot about the cream. So cream, I don't want to add a lot. Probably here is like 100 something grams. I'm gonna add to the puree, and that's pretty much it. The rest is gonna be mainly stock, which is already there, is already done. All I've done with the stock, I'm just gonna show you before we start doing anything else and going ahead with the rest of the ingredients. So with the stock, I've got some onion, a carrot, a few celery stick, and I also added like 2 cloves of garlic, and just let them simmer for like half an hour, 25 minutes or so. Just get like a light vegetable soup. Now, if you want with chicken, obviously you can go with chicken. That's a different story. We want to kind of keep it not entirely vegetarian, because obviously Parmesan is not vegetarian, but that's fine. You know what I mean? If you want it with chicken, which probably you're going to get better result with chicken stock, go with chicken stock. Today we are going vegetarian. Well, kind of, as I said, if you skip the Parmesan cheese, we're going without meat. Yeah, but this has some. Okay, so now let's go. Let's do it. So we're starting with the mushrooms. First, I want to get the puree. Well, I want to get actually a few things in the same time. I want to get the puree, and I'm going to cook the risotto. So let's start with preparing all the vegetables, because after that I want to get the induction. I want to get that induction here, so we have a bit more space for cooking. First, let's prepare all the vegetables in one go, and then we start doing all the cooking. It's kind of counterproductive, but in the same time, I want to make sure that I have enough space, just to make sure that you kind of understand what's going on here. Okay, so knife. Now with the mushrooms, I like peeling them like this. So I like to get rid of this part. It's not necessarily, to be honest, you can skip it. This is it's a weird job to do, and it takes quite a bit of time, but I think it's worth it. Like this, you get rid of some of the dirt as well. I gave them a quick wash just before that, but I like removing this, and especially probably it's not that necessary for these kind of mushrooms, to be honest, but especially when you're using bigger mushrooms, like flat cap mushrooms, I highly recommend, because that's the outside layer tends to have like a really weird texture. This is probably not that necessary, but in the same time, I want to do it. I don't know. We're probably going to give up after doing like half. Who else we've got here in the chat? We're all good for now. We don't have any. If you guys have any questions, by the way, I obviously drop them in the chat. Otherwise, let's have a great time. Let's do some cooking. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to peel the rest of them. It's probably a stupid idea, especially because we're making puree. It's not really doing that much. I thought that is probably something good there to do, but I don't see that much dirt on the outside of it, because I give them a quick wash. Plus, we pureed them. Should be fine. Skipping that all the way. So with the mushrooms, all you want to do, you don't want to go too crazy, obviously, because we're using them for puree. Just cut them in quarters. So in 4 will be easy. In this situation, you can keep the whole mushroom, because obviously being pureed, it doesn't really matter if you keep the actual, I don't even know how it's called, to be honest. I don't think it's called stalk. It might be something else. Well, the mushroom stand, that's what it was. Probably it was, yeah. Well, we're cooking the whole thing, actually. Cooking the whole thing just because we're making a puree. So yeah, I kind of find my words, but luckily we have Arthur here, so he's got his English on point. So these are the mushrooms that are going to be for the puree. Now, with these, just get them back into this container for now. As I said, we're going to try to prepare as much as possible before that. I sometimes use, it all depends what you use mushrooms for. I sometimes use the mushroom stem, sometimes I don't use it. It all depends what I use it for. But in this situation, since we're making a puree, we're getting all in the same place. Now, let's get the onion. As I said, this onion is tiny, so let me show you actually what's going on here. This is a tiny onion, so plus I'm getting the outside layer off because I left it in my fridge for a while, and then I realized, oh, I've got an onion there I should use, so I don't wanna bin it. So we just, in the end, it's a half onion, even less than half, to be honest. So it's not much here going on. I'm gonna be using half of this for the risotto, for the actual when you're cooking the risotto, and the other half for the mushroom puree. Okay, try to go as fine as you can. I mean, for the puree, it doesn't really matter, but I'm just kind of chopping them now at the same level since it's not much work here. Yeah, for the puree, you can go bigger, but then in the end, you know, we're just going to end up chopping exactly the same like the other. Right. Now, garlic. As I said, so one garlic is going to be for the actual. So this is going to go with the puree. This is going to go with the risotto when we're cooking the risotto in like the risotto base, basically. Because that's why I'm trying to kind of like, it's going to be weird to understand. So we've got two different things going on. One is the puree. The other one is the risotto base. Although we're going to combine them after one with another, I want to kind of keep them separate so you have an idea. How do I make the risotto base and how do I make the actual puree? Although I'm pretty sure I made on this channel some other risottos, and it's pretty easy, to be honest with you. I'm gonna go through the whole process with you since we have till 12 a.m. if for that matter. But yeah, we're gonna go through all the process together. Right, so we've got the garlic out of the way. With the one that's going into the puree, just chop it like roughly. You don't need to go too crazy with it. Bang. And with the one that's going into the, to be honest with you, the amount of mushrooms we've got here, they're definitely gonna get us more puree than for 2 portions, but that's fine. I can, if I want, I can freeze some of it, get it out of the freezer when you want to make another portion. But I don't want to make like a tiny, like smaller amount, because when I put it into the blender, I'm going to have a hard time blending it if it's not enough content there. So that's why we're making probably a bit more than we should have. It's definitely more than we need for 2 portions, but that's fine. You can keep it for next time. Now we've got this out of the way, so we've got the garlic for both situations. I'm gonna, so let's keep it like this separately. Let's just keep it here. So that's the puree and that's the risotto. Now with these mushrooms, I'm gonna trim them. I'm just gonna trim some of the stem because I want to get rid of the bottom part, which is kind of dry. I'm gonna leave the rest. I think they look cool like this. So you don't want to go too small. I mean, it all depends depending on how big the mushroom is, but I want to leave it for the presentation as well. It's going to look better. Again, we're not going to use all the mushrooms. There are quite a few mushrooms here for 2 portions. I think I need another like 2 or 3, and that's pretty much it. But it all depends, obviously, how many portions you're making. I would say that for a portion, especially because these are going only like on top, that's what you need. So probably 4. Obviously, these are quite big. Some of them that, it all depends how big they are again. Okay, so these in 4, and then right. Another 2 because these are tinier, and that should do the job. I'm just gonna chop these in 2 because that's enough. They don't need to be exactly the same size because you're gonna get like different texture, which is gonna work perfectly. So I think what we've got here is just enough. So these are not for the puree. These are the ones that we're gonna fry at the end, but we'll keep them all on the same board. Since we've got quite a big chopping board, that should do the job. Now, thyme. Actually, this is nothing to do with it for now. I think we've got everything we need to kind of like make a start, and we're gonna put the induction here and let's just do it. So let me just move this out the way. So let's move that out the way and let's put the induction here. Okay. Okay, induction in place. Let's go. Right, I'm gonna get something for, don't have big container. Okay, I'm gonna be using this for the mushroom, for starting like for the puree actually. Right. This doesn't take long to heat up because it's obviously being induction. You can see already that's steam happening because there was some water in this pan. Okay, so we're going in with a bit of oil, not too much because I'm going to be using some butter as well, which I forgot to mention about earlier, but we're going to get some butter at some point in here because butter, again, with the rest of the ingredients works really well, getting that risotto nice and creamy. So we're going to get some butter in there too at some point. Now, first, let's get this onion that we prepare and the garlic. So that's for the puree right there. You probably can be a lot more organized than I am if you're doing it at home, but it just happens that doing the filming and all this kind of stuff, I'm a bit all over the place. Now, I want to get in the mushrooms right away. Straight in, we're going a bit higher heat. I want to start kind of like give them a bit of color. So everything in there, we keep it nice and simple. And I'm also going to be adding a bit of butter right now. So we're going in with a bit of butter, not a lot, but we're going in with like 10 grams probably is in there of butter. So that should be fine for now. And we're going to be adding another like probably 10, 15 when we actually frying the mushrooms. And that's probably the amount of butter we're going to be using. Let's see if we can put some music. I mean, don't think there's going to be anything out of ordinary. It's just going to be some stock music because obviously you can't do it during. Okay, let's try this. I was meant to do it earlier. Just on the background, nice, chill. That should do the job. Okay, so this is going to take, I don't even know, another like 2 minutes, 3 minutes or so. So we want to kind of like start to give a bit of a color to the mushroom. So that's why I'm increasing the heat. So it's pretty hot. I'm also bringing the veg stock here because I'm going to be using a bit of veg stock, not just cream. We've got the veg stock. I mean, the vegetables are still there, but that's fine. And then once we got a bit of color with on the mushrooms, we can start adding cream. We can start adding the veg stock. So all these combined, nice puree, nice and not complicated. But that's what we want to kind of keep it. We're already kind of going a step up or an extra mile, if you want, because of we're basically making a puree with a risotto for the risotto, which is not. It sounds complicated, but it's not. Obviously, I want to add seasoning, and I'm going to keep it simple. A good pinch of salt, but then I don't want to add the salt. That's another thing. I don't want to add it right now. I'm going to add the salt right at the point when I'm adding the stock, because as soon as you add the salt, the mushrooms start releasing a bit more liquid, and you don't want that. We want to keep it as dry as possible, at least for now. Don't need these, just kind of getting stuff out of the way because there'll be a lot of stuff that we don't need. Okay, now it starts getting at the point that I can see some color going on. I can see that they kind of intensify that flavor. So now we're going in with the veg stock. We don't add a whole lot because mushrooms contain a lot of water. So once we get them into the blender, the puree is going to be far too watery. Although that's not that big of a deal, because let's say if our puree is too watery, that's kind of fine because we're going to add less stock. So that's not that big of a problem. But just so you know, you've got mushrooms, they contain water, you've got obviously the liquid. So those two combined is going to get you a bit more probably liquid puree than you expect. So now with the salt, I just want to go straight in. I'm going to add like a quarter of teaspoon or so, something like that. Up to a teaspoon, up to half teaspoon, sorry. So up to half teaspoon, I would say that how much I added. And go with a good pinch of black pepper, freshly grounded black pepper. Although it looks like I'm adding a lot, I'm kind of tricking you here because it's not that much. The meal is kind of humid, and that's why I don't really get as much pepper as you probably think. Okay, I think I got like a good pinch of pepper there, so that should do the job for the puree. Now, I want to add a few sprigs of thyme. And when I'm talking sprigs of thyme, I'm only adding this part here, just the leaves, nothing else. Few leaves going straight in. Yeah, about two sprigs of thyme. I mean, the other were tiny, so you probably added 3 because they were tiny, but 2 sprigs of thyme. If you pick only the leaves, that's all you need. Now we're going to bring this to the boil. It's already boiling, simmering. We're going to drop the temperature slightly. And now on the other side, we can start with the risotto, getting the base. Yeah, actually, I need this here next to me, so there we go. Right, with the risotto base now, getting another pan. Bang. Let me show you what's going on here. Start on lower heat, you don't need to go crazy. Medium heat, kind of. Okay, so I'm gonna add extra virgin olive oil. You can go with normal oil if you want to. I like the extra virgin olive oil, although it's probably not that indicated for frying. That's fine with me. So I've got like 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil in there. And then we're gonna add in the onion and the garlic we prepared earlier. These are finely chopped, so they go straight in. So that's no more than a quarter of an onion, I would say, because as you can see before, our onion was tiny. So it's not much going on here. It's just a bit because we're only making 2 portions, so we don't need to go that crazy. Plus, we've got here the puree, so it's not just what's happening here, it's important what's happening here too, because we're going to get a combination of these two. Okay, reducing the heat because it's going a bit all over the place. I'm going to let this reduce, and then after that, when we're going into blending, I'm going to be adding the cream. I don't want to kind of like cook it in cream because it's going to split. The cream is just literally going to split, so I don't want to kind of like boil the cream. I'm only going to be adding it towards the end because we don't need to cook it in cream. Now, when the onion becomes translucent, which that's about right because we got quite a bit of oil, it heated up fast, especially being on induction. So when the onion becomes translucent is the time when you need to add your risotto. So risotto goes straight in. Now, at this point, you might want to add, well, you might need one of these, a wooden spoon or silicone spatula or something like that. You don't want to go with something metal. Obviously, one reason is the pan. This is non-stick pan. You don't want to go crazy when you're working with non-stick pans. Try to save them as much as possible so they get like longer life. But on top of that, you want to be delicate with the risotto. You don't want to break that rice. So you want this to be intact. You want it to be cooked. Obviously, we want to get to the point that the risotto becomes translucent, and then is when we're going to start adding the stock. But till that point, slowly, just kind of like mix it slightly. So this is going to take another like 3-4 minutes. We give it that time. When we see 3-4 minutes, or when you see the rice becoming translucent, it's going to be obvious. First, it's going to start at the edges, and after that, it's going to become more and more till it's almost like a steamed glass. You can see it like being a bit like that. I mean, probably that's a weird comparison, but it's kind of like that. And when we get to that point, actually before adding, because I'm kind of like skipping a step, although I'm not going to skip it when it comes to cooking, but then when I was talking, when it becomes translucent, just before adding the stock, we're going to be adding about 100 mils of 50 to 100 of white wine. Dry white wine is ideal. And then once that alcohol is evaporated is when we're going to continue with the stock. That's the step that I should have like explained earlier, but I kind of skipped that. We're not going to skip it when it comes to cooking, but just so you know, risotto, translucent. After that, white wine, cook the wine, because basically you want to get only the flavor from the wine. You don't want to get the alcohol, so the alcohol evaporates, and after that, we're going in with the stock. How are you guys doing? Let's see, do we have any more messages, anything you guys want to know about this recipe, or if you have any questions, obviously just drop them in the chat. I'm gonna increase a bit the temperature because it feels like we're kind of stagnating with this. This is pretty much there. Obviously, if let's say there is not enough stock in there, or is there not enough liquid, don't worry, you don't need to adjust it at this point. We're gonna get into the blender, we're gonna see what we end up. If it's slightly too dry, or let's say the blades don't catch the mushrooms because they're not enough, that's fine. We're just adding 1 or 2 ladles of liquid, job done. And we're gonna add less in here. So it's easy because you can adjust either way. If it's, let's say, too thick, that's fine again, although we can adjust it right away. We can adjust it after because I'm going to be adding more liquid in here. So this combination in between these two is really interesting. Plus, when we're going to be adding the puree, you're not going to do it right from the beginning. So it's probably a bit more complicated, but in the same time, it's not. It's all about knowing when to add what. Now with the risotto, you want to make sure that it doesn't get any color. Although like talking, it starts kind of like getting color. So I'm just reduce the heat because now we got it at the right temperature. So yeah, you don't want to fry your risotto in a way that gets properly cooked. I mean, we're not properly cooked. It gets kind of like colored from cooking. You just want to keep it as white as possible. But in the same time, well, that's the stage, obviously, when it becomes translucent, it's probably just the stage before it gets the color. I'm talking like the golden brown, golden color, and you don't want that. You want to keep it as white as possible. And it's getting there. It's not that far, to be honest with you. I'll give you another minute or two, and that should be fine. And once we get to that point, I'm gonna add the white wine, and after that the stock, and we can move on to the puree. I'm gonna blend the puree, and we can leave it on the side. Happy days, and just continue with what we've got here. Let me actually show you what's going on. Yeah, this looks good. Another minute, and we're going in with the white wine. Mushrooms, let's just have a taste, although it's nothing really happening probably at this point, or it's not happening that much. This already tastes good. Well, obviously, we've got the veg stock that has some flavor. We have the salt, pepper, plus on top of that, we have the thyme. So all this combined, onion, garlic, perfect combo. All right then, let's go in with the white wine. So about 50 to 100. That should do the job. Now we want to reduce this till to the point that the alcohol evaporates. So once basically there is, because the alcohol will evaporate, but then the rice will extract just enough flavor from that wine. And then all the alcohol, this is all the alcohol that's now coming out, which is not going to take long. In a minute or two, that's pretty much it. It's out. There's quite a bit of heat in here. So 2 minutes, I'm pretty sure is all we need. This should be fine. I'm going to turn off the heat here. I'm going to turn off the heat on this, starting adding stock. And once we start adding stock, because once we start adding stock, we can do something else. We don't have to kind of like keep stirring or anything. Well, we do have, but you know, you control the liquid, and then the liquid obviously till it gets absorbed, you can do something else and you come back to it, add a bit more liquid and so on. You can see it's not much liquid in here. The wine obviously is getting absorbed by the actual risotto, plus cooking it evaporates all the alcohol. So that's what we want, and we're getting slowly there. This is obviously not going to be the standard white risotto at the end, once we get at the end, because these mushrooms, obviously, they're going to go kind of like brown, dark color. But the taste, I can guarantee you, this is going to be one of the best risottos probably you ever had. Obviously, getting better mushrooms, you can make it even better. If you're adding porcini mushrooms, chanterelles, whatever mushrooms that you're adding, the more complexity of the mushrooms, the more complex mushrooms you're adding, the better flavor you'll get. But with what we've got here, I think we're going to get a really good result. Okay, so we're done with this. Now, well, kind of done. We start adding the stock. At the beginning, adding just like, these are pretty small ladles. 3 ladles, 3 tiny ladles. Leave it like this on medium-low heat and let it absorb some of that. And in the same time, it's cooking. Obviously, having these warm or hot, it helps because the temperature of the rice is going to stay pretty much at the same level. Or even if it drops, it doesn't drop much, and it's going to come to boil pretty soon. Now, what we want to do, let's move on with this. So let's try making some space here. So I'm going to get the blender on this side and just get that blended. Okay, so that should be fine. Getting here the chives. Thyme, I don't think I'm going to use anymore, but we'll keep it here. We'll see. We got enough thyme in here, so that's going to go into the, is going now into the sauce. Right, let's get the blender on. This is going to make some noise, but in the end, it's all for a good cause. Right, this can go here. I'm gonna be adding no more than 50 mils of cream. And we'll see, maybe we also need some of the stock. I'll actually add some stock now, just to make sure that that blade, you know, has enough. So like a ladle and a half, but bear in mind that this is a tiny ladle, so. Right. Brace for noise. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't want it to go like extreme, although it's pretty pureed already. Let me show you. I'm not sure how much you're going to see at this point. Let's get the blade out. It looks like a baby food at this point, but don't worry. Because it's not really like a proper puree in the same time. We don't want to go extremely, don't want to blend this to death. Although it's already kind of like puree the way. And we're not going to pass it through a sieve or anything like that. So it's going to go just the way it is, straight in there. And looking at it, almost all of it. We're going to add pretty much all of it, or maybe we're going to go with half. So we leave another half for the next time I'm making risotto. So like this, I can keep half in the freezer, use half for now. So now we're going to get a nice strong flavor that we want, but I'm going to be adding this towards the end of cooking. I don't want to add it now till to the point that, let's say, the risotto is 80% cooked. We're going only with stock. I want to add this only towards the end, but I don't want to add it to the end. Or I don't want to add it like once it's finished and just kind of combine it, because the risotto is not going to have the chance to absorb some of this mushroom flavor, because this is where all the flavor is going to be. There's no other flavor the risotto is only going to get in touch with the fried mushrooms at the end. Those are only for presentation. So we're not going to get much flavor if you're only adding those mushrooms on top. Or if, let's say, you were to fry them from the beginning, that's a different story. But I think doing them puree, you're going to get even better result. Or doing a mixture between puree and fried mushrooms, or even adding them in here, fried and puree, is even better. I've actually never tried that version, but the way we're doing now is just fine. Okay, a bit more stock, going with another ladle or two. So these you need to go gradually. That's the secret when it comes to risotto. You cannot just like go with the whole pan of water and just treat it as a normal rice, or as a jasmine rice, for example, or as a basmati rice. This is a bit more delicate. You need, well, if you want to get a good result, you need to treat it delicately. You need to kind of like add the liquid gradually. You want to have a good stock, nothing complicated. If you want to keep it with vegetables, as I said, you can keep it with vegetables. Just get quite a few vegetables in there and you're going to get some really good result. If you want to do it with chicken, probably even better, to be honest. From my experience, from when I done risotto before, doing it with chicken stock, it's really, really good. It just has that more intense flavor, but this will do just fine. How are we doing in the chat? Are you guys, you all good? I would appreciate if you give this a like. If you are in the stream now, I can see that at this point we have 3 people. I appreciate the like. And if you give this a share, even better, because if there are people out there that you know that might be interested to make a nice risotto, I would say that's a pretty decent risotto with the ingredients we've got. Yeah, just maybe share this with them. Okay, so this risotto, like overall, I think is probably taking like 10 to 15 minutes to cook just the way it is, like this. Probably around towards 15, I would say. I never actually count, because the secret, in my opinion, is to taste, to know when it's done. And you should have a bite. So it should be cooked pretty much all the way through, but you should have a bite, which is in Italian called al dente. So you don't want it to be rice pudding, but in the same time, you don't want it to feel like you eating rocks or pebbles. So it's got to be somewhere in between. Obviously, if you are making these just as a base, that's a different story. If you're making these only as a base, then you want to cook it probably no more than, I don't know, 50%, let's say. I would say around 50 to 60%, because you're going to reheat it. Plus, you want to, because obviously when you're making a base, it stays the way it is. It just stays like this and nothing else happened. So if, let's say, you were to make a base, you leave it like plain, you don't want anything else. And then whatever the flavor you add, you got to give the risotto the chance to absorb some of that flavor. And especially being cold, you got to bring it to the heat. So you got to make sure that it's not cooked all the way through, or it's not cooked at the level that we're cooking it now. Well, it's not cooked at that point yet, but then you know what I mean. So if you're cooking it as a base, obviously it's got to be cooked a lot less than we're cooking it now, just because after that, when it cools down, that's something you have to bear in mind as well, which I see people making this mistake, is, let's say if I was to take it now off the heat, it will continue cooking. There is still enough heat in there and enough power in there that it will continue cooking. So that's something to bear in mind. So you need to take that in consideration. Let's say if I was to take it off the heat, then you don't want to take it to the point that, let's say, I'm happy right now how it is, just is ready for serving. Because if you're not serving it now and you're going to reheat it later, you need to take it a bit prior to that. I hope I make sense, because I'm kind of going a bit all over the place, but I hope that I make sense. And if I don't, just drop me a message, just be like, you don't know what you're talking about. Right, a bit more of this. Smells really good. We could add the truffle oil in there, but we're going to be adding it at the end. And I'm not even going to be adding it in the risotto. I'm going to be adding it when I'm frying the mushrooms. And if you don't have it, as I said, that's fine. This is just a bit extra. That it happened that I had truffle oil, not that I planned it for this recipe. But since I have it, then I'm going to be using a bit. So I'm going to be adding some of this only when I'm frying the mushrooms, just a touch, so give some of those mushrooms, but not necessarily to the risotto, although you could do them both. It's totally up to you. Or you can just drizzle a bit on top. It works either way. My mom is in the house, obviously. Hello, hello. Okay. We're not that far with this. That's why it's kind of like boring in a way, because, as I said, you need to go gradually when it comes to risotto. And that's what is exactly like when you're making bread. If you don't have the time for it, just don't do it. So next time, if you're thinking of making risotto, maybe planning in advance. It will help a lot. Getting all the ingredients in advance. If, let's say, you need to cook it for someone, then get it in advance, or have the base at least ready. So cook your risotto, let's say 50 to 60%, just the base, the way it is, the way you see it now. Stop it when you feel like it's about 50% or 60% cooked. Put it into a tray flat so it cooks fast, so it cools down faster. And then just put it into a container or something like that, wrap it up, and then when you need to use it, just use it. Oh, sorry. Right, let's see what we've got. Not bad. It's not that far. It's actually not that far. I'm going to start adding a bit of salt because I wanted to absorb some salt as well. Obviously, there is some in the sauce. So add about half teaspoon, a quarter of teaspoon, something like that. I know people don't add black pepper. I add black pepper to a white risotto, although it's a bit crazy. Some people go with white pepper or they know not at all. I'm fine. Black pepper is just fine. And it actually has a really nice flavor, especially when it's freshly grounded. Don't go with more than a pinch, but as mentioned earlier, I need to kind of like spin the wheel a lot more than in normal situations, just because my pepper mill got a bit humid. So that's a pinch of pepper right there, incorporating everything in it. Now, once you absorb all that liquid, I'm going to stop with the cooking in there, and I'm going to get ready a pan for mushrooms. So let's get a pan ready for mushrooms. I'm using exactly the same pan. I'm not even washing it properly. It's fine. We use mushrooms in here. It's absolutely fine. You can use it. Just kind of like rinse it to get some of that liquid off. Now, I'm going to use a combination of normal oil, a bit of butter, because I want a bit of that butter to absorb, and at the end, just a drizzle of extra virgin. Now, the reason why I want to start with oil is because the butter obviously doesn't have that much heat resistance. So we start with normal veg oil, something neutral like, I don't know, canola oil, sunflower oil, something like that. Okay, turning off the heat here. This is gonna get there. It's not there just yet, but we need to add the puree, half of the puree, and maybe if we need to adjust with a bit more stock, we'll do it after. So now, let me show you what's going on here. 2 tablespoons or so of veg oil, and then the mushrooms straight in. Let me give this a quick wipe. Okay. I want to keep the heat quite high because I want to give a color to this. Now, meanwhile, while these are frying, let's get half of the puree in here. So, half puree going straight in. And now we need to combine all this together. I'm going to turn on the heat again and just leave it on low heat and let this cook for another 2 or 3 minutes. And if we need to adjust with a bit more, liquid, we can do that. But I want to kind of let the risotto absorb some of that flavor. Actually, let's get some chives chopped meanwhile. We need some chives to finish the dish. So we'll get some chives quickly chopped here. Now make sure you don't burn your mushrooms. Right. I'm only going to be adding seasoning at the end, same as we did when we were making the puree. And I'm also adding a tablespoon of stock. So we want our risotto to be slightly runny, but we don't want it to be like this. This is a bit too much. So slowly it will absorb some of that. That's no problem. Mushroom don't need that much to cook, so it's not that much cooking involved. So we're getting in there like 10 grams of butter. I want them to get some of that butter aroma. And then once the butter melts, we'll give it just another minute, and that's pretty much it. And I'm adding in the chives, And we can also, if you want, you can also add a few sprigs of thyme. Yeah, just get a few sprigs of thyme. It's not going to do any harm. Although we have thyme in the puree, a few sprigs of thyme when you're cooking the mushrooms, you're going to get a really nice aroma. You could add some garlic as well, but we already have garlic in here. We have in the puree. We have when we cook the risotto. I think it's just fine. There's no point adding garlic. Now, although you could get 2 cloves of garlic just crushed to get a bit more like garlic flavor in there. You could do that, but we are good. We are good the way we are. Adding a few chives here. Stop the heat. Heat off. And then a drizzle. Not too much because this is pretty strong. Drizzle of truffle oil. This is getting there. We kind of like, you need to kind of multitask. I want to show you like a bit faster, but you can obviously do them separately. You don't need to go in the same time with what I'm doing here. You could make first the risotto and just do the mushrooms right at the end, but that's what pretty much we've done. And what I mean that you don't need to necessarily cook on 2 different places. Okay, this looks good. It's getting nice and creamier. So I'm going to be adding I've got a bit more butter left in here. So what I'm doing now, I'm just emulsifying this butter in here, getting it nice and creamy. So probably altogether we use about 30 grams of butter or so, something like that, or even a bit less, like 25, I would say. So just add the cubes that are cold and then incorporate them into the risotto. And that's when it's going to be nice and creamy. Okay, let's taste for seasoning. Let's see how this is like. I feel like we can do with a bit more salt. We're adding a good pinch of salt in here. You can see it's getting nice and creamy now, especially after adding the butter. Plus, obviously, having the risotto, puree that we made earlier. That's helping bringing everything together. We do have a bit of cream. It's not a whole lot. If you think about it, we had like 50 mils of cream. So split in 2 because I only use half of the puree. It's not a whole lot cream, but you can do without the cream. You can definitely do without the cream. You can simply skip it, but yeah. Okay, I'm just adding 1 more ladle, and I think that should be it. Once this gets absorbed, we'll be good to go. So now I need the Parmesan. So we've got the Parmesan cheese here. I want to incorporate some of this flavor. You can obviously put some on top, but I want to incorporate some of this Parmesan flavor inside the dish. So what other way, than actually cooking the Parmesan? So getting the Parmesan in there, and then obviously that Parmesan flavor, because it's not just for finishing, like most people are using it just, let's say, even on the pasta, they're using it only at the end. But I think cooking with the Parmesan and getting it in there like right from the beginning, or not right from the beginning, getting it to cook with the ingredient you wanna elevate, which in this situation is the risotto, is gonna get even a nicer, creamier texture, and you're gonna feel some of that cheese inside, not just on the outside. We could go with a bit more cheese. I think it's just fine, but we could go with a bit more. If you want to, that probably you could go with double than I did. So that's all it is. At this point, look at this risotto. That's how it needs to look like. So it needs to be creamy, but in the same time, it doesn't need to be. So it needs to be kind of liquid in a way, but not at the point that's too much. So it needs to kind of like sit where you put it, but in the same time slowly come back. So that's the risotto done. Now, plating. Let's get everything into the plate. Let's have something to eat, and probably have to let you go then after this. Let me see if I actually find some sort of like plate. Probably need to give you a quick wash. But we're gonna put everything together into the plate, and I'm gonna be showing you how it's gonna look at the end. Pretty sure we're gonna get a really, really good result. But just wait a second. Okay, so let's make some space. Chives now in just before serving, because you want to keep them nice and green. You don't want to add the chives during cooking. You're only adding them just before serving. So got a nice chives. Keep them nice and green. Now, plate. Got two nice portions in here. Okay, mushrooms. Because you want to do like half, but okay. And now what we could do, we're just gonna shave a bit of a Parmesan here. Well, that's if I find the actual potato peeler, which I hopefully will. Yeah, found it. So just shaving a bit. I don't have much Parmesan left here, but just shaving a few of this. And then if you want to add a bit more truffle oil, just a touch more, because this is really strong. What I would do, which I like adding, is some extra virgin olive oil and let it kind of like go around the risotto. And my friends, mushroom risotto, can guarantee you this is a lot better than just following the standard recipe. Do a puree, don't be lazy. It's pretty easy, as you could see. You can go with some cheap mushrooms like the chestnut mushrooms, and after that maybe use something expensive on top. Or if you have the money, go porcini all the way, and you're gonna get even stronger flavor. If you were to add some of this truffle oil, you're gonna probably enhance the flavor and bring it to a different level. But even if you don't have that, now of course if you have some pea shoots or something green to go on top, it's gonna look even better. But for what it is and home cooking, I think it's just perfect, and it's got a really, really nice mushroomy flavor, because that's what we want. Thank you for being with me today. I really, really appreciate it. We'll see you soon. I don't really know, probably not next Friday for a live, but maybe the Friday after. That was me for this evening. Bye, bye, bye. Make sure you like, make sure you share these on the way out, and I will see you in the next one.